And would you look at that? I actually have my notes up right off the bat. I came prepared this time. Oh, look at me. Look at me. So professional, guys. So professional. So, this is where we left off last week. I consolidated a bunch of this stuff. Well, not consolidated. I readjusted this chart and brought some things down back a little bit closer to where they were because I've removed some things from the list and it's a little bit less top heavy now. And we're going to go through. I didn't watch absolutely everything on this list. I still am not caught up on Demon Lord 2099. I still am not caught up on Orb, even though I did watch 2 episodes today. I am not caught up on Ranma. The site I was using for You Are Miss Servant, and I have not caught up with Blue Box this week either. I've missed out on a couple of them, but that's to be expected because you can't absolutely watch everything every week. It's a lot of work. All right, well, let's get into it. Obviously, the first one I'm going to start with is Shangri-La Frontier because episodes come out on Sunday. The one thing I do got to say about this series is it consistently reminds me of the days when I would like play games with my friends and we would discover exploits and stuff, and we would use the game's programming and bugs to our advantage and like try to get an extra leg up on some of that stuff. It reminds me of that. And in this latest episode, it does show a little bit of that stealth patching that happens in games to try and keep players in check. So in this particular case, Sun Raku is trying to get a bunch of Crystal Scorpion materials, and he finds out that the way he had been farming them wasn't working anymore. So he had to develop an entirely new method using the game's physics engine to try and kill them. It was a very clever episode. I liked it. Still not really like huge into the battle stuff yet, but it's still fun. It's still consistently good, and it just needs that one absolutely like banger episode to send it up to the top. Tying the knot with an Amagami sister. That's what's next on the list. Tying the knot with an Amagami sister has consistently been fun and enjoyable. It's still that sort of like harem romance thing going on, but it did do something very interesting with the supernatural aspect of it. We've already seen a little bit of it where like the main character Uryu, he had that experience with the with the oldest sister of the three, where like he questioned whether it was all even like real or not, and now he had this dream that basically ended up coming true in this latest episode. So the guy who does not believe in gods or any sort of supernatural phenomenon is starting to experience a lot of supernatural phenomenon. It's done good for the characters, kind of showing you like more of the likable sides of them, especially the middle sister. I always forget her name. The world's most notorious talker runs the greatest clan. So this episode was a tad bit standard, honestly. There were a lot of like cliches that were used in this particular episode to progress the plot, but it's not terrible. It was still enjoyable. I do like the idea of like Noel having a proper fight of his own and having to deal with the swordsman guy all on his own. And it gives like a good bit of backup to the concept that Noel can still fight on his own. Like he's still a strong person. It's just that he doesn't have all the benefits of like frontline fighters. He isn't a frontline quote unquote class like a swordsman or something like that. So he doesn't get all of their benefits, but as a human being, he's still pretty strong and can hold his own in a fight because he knows how to handle himself. So I like it. But is it better than Shangri-La Frontier? No, so it's going to have to stay where it is. So then we're going to talk about Dandadan. So I've been loving Dandadan. It's been doing a really good job adapting the source material, but this episode is not particularly my favorite point of the series. So I wasn't a super huge fan of Ira when she was first introduced in the manga. She gets better as time goes on. But when you like they first start her out, she's a bitch. I didn't like her. I was like, oh, this character's so annoying. I wish she'd just go away. But this arc and this confrontation is cool because it adds a new member to the cast, a new person who's a part of the quote unquote crew. It's been fun, but not my favorite point in the series. However, it can only go up from here. 365 days to the wedding. Honestly, I think this one's going to stay because its writing has been good. It did present some very interesting things, but there's also a huge problem. It's been progressing fairly well for the first 4 to 5 episodes, and then right at the end of the 5th, it decides it's gonna start throwing wrenches, and then it really monkeys things up with the whole, like, divorce sub-arc that they've decided to introduce with the coworker and his wife, like, this guy who was just, like, happy-go-lucky, like, enjoying married life and having a great time, and all of a sudden his wife presents him with divorce papers, and it wrecks his life. And it feels like it doesn't vibe right with the series. Like, it was kind of, like, chill, not too, like, um, stressed out. There wasn't anything, like, super, dramatic happening, and I liked that aspect of it, and this is kind of it's an interesting way to try and do some character development for the main 2 because neither of them really, like, feels like they fully understand what it means to be married and all that. It was kind of wild though because the guy who's like presented with divorce papers gets absolutely pissed drunk and like the whole company ends up like chasing him around a public park while he's acting like a gorilla in the middle of the night, and it was absolutely insane. Enjoyable for various different reasons, but I feel like I would have liked it better if they would have just kept it on one track rather than trying to throw a wrench into the whole relationship thing. Especially now as there's like a bit of a misunderstanding between forget the character's name. But like the two main characters who are pretending to like they're getting married to avoid a job transfer. Um there's like some sort of misunderstanding between the two of them that's sort of monkeyed the whole thing up, pun intended. This next one, though, is really going to get me in trouble. Dragon Ball Daima. I'm moving back down to okay. I can't. Okay, its latest episode is just okay. I consistently like the fighting, but the it's not an enthralling story. I can't get invested in anything that's happening because it's never been like Goku or any of the Dragon Ball characters have been super deep or amazing. And it's nothing that I really cared about out of Dragon Ball as a series. So when it comes to this stuff, I'm not too terribly impressed with Daima. It's also really weird to see people praise Goku for taking out a bunch of randos when we know that this dude can destroy like cities and planets if he really, really wants to. So it's all over there. It's all over the place. I feel like it's just not my thing. It isn't terrible. I do get some enjoyment out of it, so I will continue watching it, but I am dropping it all the way back down to the bottom because I couldn't care less about it, honestly. It has not been amazing like the Dragon Ball fandom wants to like screech about it being. So now we're going to talk about Trillion Game. This latest episode was actually pretty good. I feel like they did a lot to like present that Gaku is actually like a competent tech guy and he knows what he's doing, and they show how Haru is a really good strategist and how he knows what he's doing and how to win competitions even if they're not in his forte, and how he did all this crazy stuff to set up their win at the competition beforehand, knowing that they were going to be the target of literally every team there. So they do a really good amount of character development, but the one complaint I have is they continually flash forward to the future and show where the two are like properly like successful businessmen. They're like top members of the business world and all of that, and it ruins the suspense. Like it basically just tells you, oh yeah, they're gonna succeed here ahead of the like actual success. And it kind of takes away from their actual victory when it happens. So I find that element of it just slightly frustrating. Ever so slightly frustrating. So yeah, as far as Trillion Game, I'm actually going to move it up one. It deserves it after that episode. It was very entertaining. Magilumiere Co-Limited. I do like that we actually did get a little bit more magical girl action sequences in this one, but the parts of them that I liked were kind of short-lived, and it was still a lot of like corporate stuff, a lot of goofiness and basically fiddling around. However, right at the very end of the episode, we actually do get something to sort of confirm the stakes of like this is an actual dangerous job that these people are performing. someone gets like terribly injured right at the end of the episode, and we don't even know if like they're gonna live or die or anything, or how bad that the injury actually is. So I think it did a good job with that. This episode, I don't think it deserves to move up because of it. It didn't do terrible. It holds its spot. I think it's going to stay exactly where it is. Grieving Souls. Let this grieving soul retire. It continues with its gimmick. The latest episode has been pretty chill, but they're kind of building up to the like whole explosive finale, or the second explosive second half of the series. I feel like there's going to be a lot of action going forward with what they're setting up, particularly the confrontation between Steps and the Akashic Tower. But it's still just this faker dude keeps making the accidentally right plays every single time, and he just wants to get out of trouble. But every time he does something, it leads to resolving major situations that could be huge problems, and he doesn't even realize what he's doing. It's kind of annoying, but at least the episode wasn't terribly insufferable, so it's going to stay exactly where it is. Next one on the list, I'll Be a Villainess Who Goes Down in History. I think it actually had a really, really good episode 6. So I'm moving it up to the top of the okay category because it's still very tropish. It's still the like Otome game stuff, but they did add some elements that I liked. It did finally confront and like show a real world example of how the heroine character, Liz, her like naive pacifistic ideology of we should just talk things out and resolve our differences can actually get people killed. She almost got the main character killed because she stopped Alicia from retaliating against her kidnappers, and the kidnapper then saw that there was nothing she could do and he drew a blade. If someone else hadn't intervened, she probably would have been killed there. On top of that, it also kind of shows that there was a bit of resentment from the heroine towards Alicia over everything that has happened. That's something I kind of predicted might end up being a thing. Is there might be a little bit of narcissism and a mask off moment coming. So yeah, I think it did a really good job with episode 6. Now, Mecha Uday. Actually, I'm jumping this way up, like way, way up for now, because episode 6 was an absolute banger. I was expecting the stereotypical betrayal arc that was going to happen, like things were going to go sideways and the main character was going to fall for the trap and all that. No, that's not at all what happened, and they actually did a really good job of resolving that by giving us some character development and some dialogue sections, and said betrayer then decides to go back on what she was planning, and it turns into a whole fight. That is where like it really popped off. Is it had some really, really good dynamic action sequences. So character development, it handled its little betrayal arc really well, and the action all came together for a really good episode. It's still cramming, I feel like trying to jam absolutely everything into like a sort of compact season, but this one really did come through for me, and it gave me the feel like I got some like good classic like cartoon kind of vibes from this, the stuff that I grew up with. They aren't like particularly amazing or deep stories, but they're still good and they're fleshed out for what the time slot they have is. Obviously, we have ReZero's latest episode, and nothing has changed. This is still my top pick for the season. It's been doing an absolutely banger job of covering everything that has been written in the novels. The only complaints I have are particularly to do with the demi beasts. I expected something a little bit more eldritch out of their design. I'm not particularly happy with the way they look, but for the most part, they are kind of in line with what I would expect out of Tape, considering what you usually see out of the novels. Now, the other thing I did have a problem with, and it did look gorgeous, I'll say that the animation was great, and it visually, it looked good, but there's something about the choreography for when Priscilla first starts wielding the Yang sword to defeat to kill the demi beasts that just didn't look right. And it was particularly with the fact that it would use like fast bursts of or quick bursts of speed for every like set of movements she would do. So she would do a bunch of attacks, pause, and do a bunch of attacks. Now, keep in mind, everything else around her is going in slow motion to kind of show that Priscilla is superhuman. So she's moving ridiculously fast, and it would be a bunch of slashes, stop, pose, bunch of slashes, stop, pose. I felt like it was off. I felt like it was a little dumb, but it still did look good. I feel like it just would have been better if you had kept with a consistent set. You had kept the motion speed consistent rather than pausing in there to then go into another set of movements. It just felt wrong. So now we are going to move into Bleach. Bleach, the latest episode was good. We got reintroduced to a bunch of characters who are now returning from older arcs of the series. Grimjow and Nell are back, as well as some of the Fullbringers who were not killed or um, depowered, I guess you could say, at the end of the Fullbringer arc. So it's nice to see some of these characters. I think they did a really good job of making them somewhat likable and showing how like they can combine their powers and actually do something like really super effective. But again, it's just more prep work moving on into like the final confrontation. So now we are finally at the point where um the court guard squads are at the royal palace, and it looks like everyone's moving in for like the final battle of the series. It's good. I'm more excited what's coming after this. Orb. So I watched 2 more episodes of Orb. I am now on episode 5. And I gotta say that I'm actually very intrigued by this. And I am going to push this all the way back up here. And why is that? Because episode 4 starts out with a really, really good duel scene. And when I say that, I mean the animation is good, the artwork is good, but not only that, it's interestingly historically accurate. They use parrying daggers and rapiers and stuff like that. I liked everything that they did for that scene. And then from there, it's more storytelling and stuff to sort of set up the progression of the study of heliocentrism. It does get a little bit antagonistic towards religious beliefs, which I can tolerate, but not terribly a huge fan of. Other than that, I mean, I don't really have many things to say about those 2 episodes other than they looked good. I think the story's been progressing pretty well. Um, Everything's been fairly accurate to the time period, and it hasn't been too terribly antagonistic over religious beliefs, which is something I would usually expect. Otherwise, I don't think there is any other updates to make to this list. So not a whole lot of movement, but the ones that did move actually moved somewhat significantly.